But now, without further ado, introducing former presidential candidate, Andrew Yang!
In New Hampshire! How have you all been? The last 4 years have not been the greatest. I'll be honest. It's one reason I'm back. Yeah. Things were great, I probably wouldn't be here. So I'm here to talk about two things, Dean Phillips and AI. I'm going to start with AI and then transition to Dean Phillips. And I have to say, these two things are tied together. How many of you remember my presidential campaign 4 years ago? Remember that? Well, you better, because we spent millions of dollars on advertising, and I'd be very upset. That all just went poof. So if you remember my campaign 4 years ago, I was deeply concerned about AI. I was like, hey guys, AI is coming, and it's going to be devastating to a lot of American workers. And one of the examples I used was call center workers. When do you think AI is going to do the work of call center employees?
Yesterday.
Well, I think that's a thinker, right? When do you think Google's going to be able to get that one? Someone said, what day of the week is it? They'll get around to it on Monday. So there are 2 million Americans who work at call centers right now, making on average $17 to $18 an hour. So let's imagine AI comes and does that work. That's a celebration to someone, but it's certainly not going to be celebratory for any of those 2 million people or their families. And that's a very obvious one, but there are inobvious ones all throughout various organizations. It looks like we should have gotten a bigger room, New Hampshire. So I know there are some bigger rooms in this state. So I ran for president. I'm going to tell you guys a story. And by the way, this is playing out again in like very, very eerie fashion. So I went to Washington, D.C. in 2017. And I said, hey guys, AI is coming. It's going to displace millions of American workers. What are we going to do? And I had a bunch of muckety-mucks around the table, and one person said something smart that I didn't understand. And another person says, and you'll see why I didn't understand in a minute. Someone else said something smart. I was like, I'm not sure what he's saying. And the third person said, Andrew, let me tell you what you actually need to hear. You're in the wrong town. No one here in D.C. is going to do anything about this. Because fundamentally, this is a town of followers, not leaders. We will do nothing unless a wave comes crashing down on our heads and forces us to do something. And I said, oh my gosh, that is the only honest thing I've heard today. And so I said, okay, how do we create this wave? And this wave can only originate in one place, and that is here in New Hampshire. You are the only people in this country with this magical power to change the course of American history by reaching out and saying, you know what? This is who we want to be the next president of the United States. This is the only place in the country where democracy still works the way it was intended. The only place. You need to treasure that. So 4 years ago, I came and I tried to make this case. Some of you remember it. And on some levels, and I will confess to you all, when I was talking to my wife about running for president, we weren't exactly measuring the drapes. It wasn't like, I don't stand here before you like really surprised or disappointed that I'm not the president. Let's put it that way. Our goal was to try and help us speed up so we could address these challenges. And in the intervening 4 years, you know what happened? AI became real. Yeah. You know, ChatGPT, your kids sometimes using it. Now your schools have new rules. It's like, hey, can't just have AI like do all your homework. And now that AI is here now, people are looking around saying, what the heck are we going to do about it? Like, what is the plan? Now that's why I come to Dean Phillips. All right, so Dean Phillips, he raised his hand a number of months ago and said, hey guys, I'm not sure Joe Biden should run for re-election. Like, I think that, it might be time for the next generation. A lot of people share the same opinion. Some people who supported Joe Biden, like me, I was a campaign surrogate for Joe. Joe is a good, decent man, a true public servant, has gotten a lot of things done. But I don't think he is the right fit for 2024 as opposed to 2020. In 2020, the Patriots were 12-4 and first in the AFC. 2020 and 2024 are not the same years.
Hey, Dean!
So Dean Phillips raised his hand and was like, hey, I don't think Joe should run again. And all of a sudden, all of these people came out of the woodwork being like, Dean, what are you saying? What are you saying? He's like, I'm saying the same thing you were saying to me in private. So Dean, being a patriot, went and said, look, I'm going to try and get someone to challenge Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. He went to Gavin Newsom. He went to Gretchen Whitmer. He went to J.B. Pritzker. How do you think all those folks responded to Dean's plea? Crickets. Like, can't be seen talking to you. That sort of thing. And I wanted to say again, Washington, D.C. is a town of followers, not leaders. The word has gone and said, Joe Biden, DNC, it's like, no, we will not compete. This despite the fact that Joe is down by 8 points in Georgia, down by 8 points in Michigan, states he won, down by 9 points in North Carolina, which is like a swing state. Like, Joe Biden, who I supported last time, in my view, is going to deliver us to Trump, the sequel. Dean Phillips saw this and said, you know what? I am going to do something about it. And Dean Phillips is the only one with the courage, the character, and conviction to go against the grain, to go against the legion of followers in Washington, D.C. who would put their careers above their country and said, you know what? America deserves a choice. America deserves a choice in its leaders. Having someone who's 54 years old like Dean Phillips trying to address the challenges of AI would actually help me sleep more soundly at night. As opposed to the folks who are currently in office who frankly think they're going to be there whether they solve our problems or not. Whether they do something, don't do something, they say, you know what, we're going to be here no matter what. That's what they believe. And the only people who can prove them wrong are in this room right now. Woo! The people here in New Hampshire. That's why I'm here in New Hampshire, because you hold our future, our country's future, my family's future, all of our shared future in your hands on Tuesday in terms of who you select to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. So Dean's going to talk about what his administration will do on AI, and I will be proud and privileged to join his administration if he will have me. But it's up to you to make sure that he actually has that ability to solve our problems, not just in AI, but on affordability, on education, on public safety, on housing, all the things that we see slipping away in our communities, and we're casting about for leadership. And I'm here to tell you, New Hampshire, I have found that leader, and I think you're going to find that he is the person that you've been waiting for. And it is my privilege to welcome and introduce the next President of the United States, three-term Minnesota Congressman, my friend, Dean Phillips.
Hey, everybody. To my brother from another mother. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Oh, this is not really about AI. It's about announcing that. Do you all remember that 2020 election when the Yang Gang formed and how cool it was and energized? And we actually had remember things called competitions? Remember that? And how exciting it is and energizing and optimism kind of floats around the country. What Andrew Yang did for this country and continues to do is a blessing to all of us, because I would argue democracy dies without competition. What do you think of that? Right? Competition makes this country better values, better ideas, innovations. That's what he brought to this. I'm so honored to have him with me. And most of all of you. Nice to see you, New Hampshire. Let me rephrase that. New Hampshire. And it's good to be here. And I am so grateful to all of you for taking some time. Now look, there are a lot of things I want to do as president. First of all, restore competency, decency, integrity to the United States government, which is lacking woefully. Courage. How about a little courage? You're all ready for some? People are willing to put the country and principles over self-preservation. We have a disease, and it's focused on self-preservation. We have a crisis of participation. That's what this is all about. That's why I'm so grateful to all of you. I will be the first AI president in American history. Andrew just said it. Men in their 80s, frankly, even good men, good women, are not in a position to anticipate and prepare us for the future. We had 100 years to prepare for climate change. We knew 100 years ago what would happen by burning fossil fuels. And what did we do? Nothing. AI, my friends, we don't have 100 years. We have months, if not just a couple years at the most. I anticipate it, I'm prepared for it, and I will be our first AI president. But how do we start? We start by doing what you do in America, bringing together the best and brightest from all around the country, industry leaders, community leaders, those who will be affected by AI. I hope you all know this.
Yeah.
It will be the most transformational technology in human history. It is going to save us all costs. It is going to make the federal government, if someone's willing to actually invest in it, much more effective and efficient. It is going to generate health outcomes that will transcend anything we could dream about right now. Create new medicines, generate new ideas. It's going to be beautiful. But it also has great risks. It's going to disenfranchise this economy. It's going to be disruptive in ways that we can actually anticipate. But if we do nothing now, which is what is happening right now in Washington, nothing. I will be our first AI president. I'm going to put together a task force of the best and brightest to anticipate what's coming and make recommendations, as we do here, to employ best practices, to put guardrails on the nefarious use of AI, but most importantly, let's talk about the blessings of AI. And when we are fearful of new things, what do we do first? We overregulate, because we don't even think about what's possible. And let me tell you, I come from a Congress in which I'm a youthful guy, if you can imagine that. We don't have people right now. We have very few people who even understand it. And if you do not understand it, all you want to do is regulate it. I want to be the leader of AI. I want to employ it in our federal government. How about that? To save costs, develop better outcomes. How many of you are waiting for checks from the IRS for too long?
Yes.
How many of you can't get any customer service phone answered at any of the federal agencies, right?
Yep.
Right, that's how we're going to change things. We can do better, and I promise you I will. We also have to pass something called the AI Act. The Europeans have already done it because they are ahead of us. But this technology was invented here. It is an American ingenuity. So we should prepare for it. Make sure there's no nefarious use, but not stifle the innovations that will make life so much more extraordinary, not just for Americans, but for the whole world. We also need to establish a Department of Artificial Intelligence. It is that transformative, the Department of AI in Washington, to essentially be the overseers of this extraordinary opportunity, both protecting us from the worst uses of it, but also encouraging the best uses of it. Does that sound reasonable to you? Yes. And then this country has got to start having a conversation about data privacy. Your data that is being used by other companies to make billions and billions of dollars. We got to protect our kids, our teenagers, all of us. And you know what else we have to do? We have to get off the screens a little bit sometimes. Let's not be overcome by all this. Let's get together with human beings and meet each other in coffee shops and on the streets and not let this take over. That's how we actually anticipate the future. So, if you can't tell, with Andrew Yang and me, Dean Phillips, and a whole generation just waiting for somebody to lead us to the future, we're ready for you. Are you ready for us?
Yeah.
Ready for change? Let's bring it. January 23rd, you guys. You know what the Democratic National Committee did to all of you Granite Staters. Now, most of the country isn't aware of it. I don't need to explain it. It is repulsive. It is suppressive. I think it is downright unconstitutional and certainly anti-democratic. So what of a better outcome could we give this country on January 23rd than to demonstrate to the Democratic National Committee, and frankly both parties, that who's still got the power? You do! Not them. You do! And all you gotta do is vote. So seize that back. Let's return decency, integrity, competency to this country. Let's move to the future. Let's not just look backwards and vote out of fear. Let's vote out of hope and optimism and joy. We can do it, everybody. I love you all. I can't wait to hear your questions and help us move to the future. It is going to be bright. All right, questions? Yes, sir.
We'd all like to see what you're talking about, but thanks. I'll hold it. Okay. But we also know that the real problem is that a majority of those that we elect to both Congress and also to our legislators are not addressing the biggest problems that concern citizens, and it's led us downhill to where we are today. So in order to implement what you're talking about, we have to make the whole process more competitive, inclusive, equitable, and so forth. And there are a whole bunch of system changes to the way we finance and structure the process that will unlock progress on all the things you're talking about. So my question is, what are those pieces and what are you willing to support in order to implement what you're talking about?
Great question. This is going to be an ironic answer. The way to solve this problem isn't actually through artificial intelligence or new technology. It is actually the most analog, old-fashioned way imaginable. Human relationships. I come to you as the second most bipartisan member of the entire United States Congress. That's every senator, every member of the House, and actually all 50 governors. 585 elected officials. I'm number 2. Now Why is that the most important thing imaginable? Because I am someone who has the relationships that is already working with both sides of the aisle. I was the vice chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus. Any of you familiar with the Problem Solvers? Yeah, good, a few people. The sad truth is, we on the Problem Solvers Caucus are the workhorses, not the show horses. Everybody in this country would have known me a lot better by the time I declared my candidacy if I was just willing to be a jerk. And the good news is, when you're not that well known, 2/3 of the country don't hate me. But I digress. My point is this. Don't get caught up in this nonsense that by the way, don't get caught up in this delusion that the two-party system is the answer to our challenges. It is the most difficult challenge we might be facing in this country. They are not working for us. They're working for themselves, and we need to seize that back. But it is what it is. And I tell you right now, the answer is very simple. Working together. I am respected and in some cases even beloved by my Republican colleagues who I am friends with because I know how to work together. And that's what I do in Congress. That's why I, coming from the private sector, do this differently. When you are brought up in the political culture, you only know one thing. Fighting each other every 2 or 4 or 6 years to win for your team, not for the country. So that is my solution, believe it or not. I know how to do this, I'm already doing it. And I promise you, on subjects like artificial intelligence, securing our southern border, war and peace, right? Raising the foundation for every American. These are not difficult to solve if you have someone in the White House who wakes up every single morning and goes to sleep every single night wanting to work together. So that's my solution. It is not old-fashioned, but believe it or not, it's exactly what we need.
We need to get more.
How about from our? I love the red vests because I'm a member. By the way, how many other jobs in America can a 54-year-old be considered a youth?
Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Mary, and I am a volunteer with AARP New Hampshire. And as you know, there are many pressing issues for the 50+, but one that doesn't seem to get recognition is that of caregiving.
Oh.
A lot of us in this room and throughout our lifetime have been caregivers to a parent, to a child, to an aunt, to an uncle, and it even affects those who do not have any family present. If they get ill, who's going to care for them? When you're president, or if elected as president, what would be your plan to help the caregivers in this country?
I'm so glad you asked that question. And I'm sure there are people in this room, myself included, who have faced those challenges. And as a person of privilege, I know how hard it was for my family. I can only imagine what it's like when you can barely make ends meet and you have a mother or a father or a child who needs care at home and you can't leave your job and you don't know what to do. This is actually dovetails with AI. You know, AI cannot solve that problem. We're not going to have a machine take care of anyone's mom or dad or child. AI is going to disrupt this economy. It might affect up to 40% of the jobs in the United States of America. So to me, what a grand opportunity to start redirecting people to the very jobs that right now are going unfilled, industries that need to be brought up, including caregiving. And how about this beautiful thing? America is still a nation of immigrants, and we must protect that. Caregiving is a human trait. It is practiced in every community in the world, no matter your religion, your race, your country, your geography. We should be attracting people from around the world, Americans themselves too, create an industry of people who are compassionate, able, well compensated to provide the care we need so that people who otherwise could go out and work and build businesses and brands and help others can do so. So that's my answer. And it's a matter of not a lack of resources, it is how we dedicate our resources. We are a country that is so extraordinarily wealthy. But I'll tell you, as Hubert Humphrey said, the test of a government is how it treats those in the dawn of life the dusk of life, and in the shadows of life. And we are not doing this the way that everybody, I think, in this room would like. And that is why when I'm president, we will redirect our resources to the places where we need to raise the foundation, and caregiving in the beginning of life, from childcare to paid leave to caregiving in later stages of life, will be elemental to my platform. Absolutely, 100%, and thank you. Yeah, how about the gentleman in the very back?
When Mr. Ed was speaking, he said that you went to Governor Whitmer, to Governor of California, to Mr. Pritzker, to run against as a primary opponent. Well, where will you select the people to populate your administration if those are the people that you're seeking out first? Because those are the people who won't do what you want to do.
I'm so glad you said that. I will be a very different leader of this country. I think the one that we really need. Let me start with how I will do it, and I'll answer your question. Let me to answer your question. I will be the first president in recent history, maybe even since Abraham Lincoln, that had the intention of bringing together a team of rivals. Our country has never needed competitors, adversaries, to sit at the same table and make decisions for this country. If we do not do that, we are in deep trouble. I will populate my cabinet. I will populate my cabinet with the very best and brightest Americans. I do not care about politics. I do care about principles. I care about experience, capacity, and competency. We populate our cabinets with politicians. And I don't know about you, I'm not very pleased with the results. So that's one. I will not just put politicians for political gain at my table. Just the opposite. People who have led multi-billion-dollar organizations and entities that know how to manage human beings, incentive structures, how to read balance sheets and P&Ls, how to focus on customer service, how to deploy technology to improve outcomes. Sadly, we've not had presidents that look at this like that. So I called the people you just referenced because they are the better known candidates, proximate and able and prepared to run an election. Not against Joe Biden, but for the presidency. And yes, I think we should assess Americans based on their willingness to meet the moment versus meeting their own aspirations. And every person that had a chance to join this race at a time when I did, chose not to, not because they don't know the country is at grave risk right now. They chose not to because they feared it might hurt their chances in 2028. There may not be a 2028 if we allow Donald Trump to return to the White House. That's my proposition, that is the truth, and do not be deluded into believing that Joe Biden is in a position to beat Donald Trump. That is the problem. And that's why I told those people, and I promise you, we will search far and wide for the best Americans to repopulate the centers of democracy in Washington. I'd like to actually spread out democracy around the country. Let's move our agencies to different parts of this country so that other people will have a chance to participate in building the country, in investing in the future, and actually populating the agencies of great importance around our country. Washington is a culture that really has to be disrupted, and I promise you I will be the disruptor. If you can't tell, I have a little bit of courage.
Over here, Dean. Over here.
Oh, right here, I'm sorry.
Hi, how are you? I saw you in Exeter with my
Yes.
sister and
That's
my
right. Nice to see you
daughters,
guys.
and my 15-year-old daughter now has the Courage poster.
Yes.
Yes, and so it's very
Mission
uplifting.
accomplished.
Yes, I would so love to see you in the White House, and but I know the importance of you reaching out to. First of all, you're so disgusted with the parties, right? So I'm curious as to why you are in the Democratic category rather than independent. Independence, I'm registered as a Democrat, but I was listening a lot to Chris Christie, this moderate, middle of the road.
Yeah.
One of my favorite podcasts is Ink Stained Wretches. I think you're related to the Eliana. But anyway, I'm blabbing, but I've got so many thoughts, but to really speak to not only the independents, but the Republicans too,
I'll tell you why, because
Thank you.
look, I was anointed a Democrat by my grandmother, dear Abby, in 1980, hours after I'd seen John Anderson, the Republican member of Congress from Illinois, who declared his candidacy as an independent. Think about the connection here. to take on, to run for the presidency in 1980. He appeared at my school one day, middle school, I was 11 years old, John Anderson speech. And I was wowed. He talked about independence and actually money in politics. Can you imagine that? In 1980. I go to dinner that night with my whole family, 4 generations of my family. I sit next to my grandmother, Abby. She asked about my day. I said it was amazing. The next president of the United States actually came to our school and spoke. And she said, honey, I don't think if he's speaking to middle schoolers, he, whoever that is going to be president. So note to self, Martini, no middle school. and then she stopped me and she said, Dean, are you a Democrat or Republican? And I said, Grandma, I'm 11 years old. I do not know what those are. And she said, you're a Democrat. I went home that night. I literally went home that night, got on this little stool we had into my parents' bookshelf, and I found the World Book Encyclopedia and looked up Democrats and Republicans, and I still didn't totally understand, which, frankly, I feel the same way right now. So you ask me why. Now, let me get serious for a moment. You know, this two-party system is actually the very threat to the country that George Washington warned us about so long ago in his farewell address. And if George Washington warned us about that, should we not take a moment and reflect on how important that was? Because he recognized, he called them factions, which, by the way, did not exist when he was president. But he said factions would undermine this democracy when people became so focused on beating each other that they lose focus on trying to win for this country. And he is right. Now, I only joined Congress after the 2016 election, and I found my daughter Pia in tears in her bedroom. She had just overcome Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's a gay woman. I didn't know that at the time. But I saw fear in her eyes that as a parent, any of you could understand, jarred me. And I sat at my table that morning and I promised my daughters I would do something. I ran for Congress. Little did I know how bad it really was, how offensively divisive, how offensively separate both leaders on both sides of the aisle have been for generations. So yes, I've seen now from the outside, building businesses, nonprofit sector, and now 3 terms on the inside, that this is sickeningly broken. And yes, we need competition. I'm a proud Democrat telling all of you, we need competition. I think primaries are good. I think both political parties need competition. But I'll tell you what, they don't want it. They want to protect a duopoly that is destructive to this democracy. And I think there is nothing more un-American than propagating, enabling, and allowing 2 political parties that are private enterprises from seizing this country from all of us. By the way, who are these people? Who are these people behind that curtain pulling these levers? Who are they? Isn't it kind of strange in America? We do not even know who they are. That's part of the problem. I'm going to run as a Democrat because I intend to repatriate decency, transparency, and integrity to a party in which I deeply believe, that has done this country a great service, I believe, over the last number of decades, but has lost its way, and clearly the GOP has as well. So that's my proposition. I want to do it authentically. I want to do it transparently, and I want to do it decently, and that means inside. But should I fail? Should Democratic voters around the country say, no, we want the same thing? That's everybody's choice. But I will not rest, I promise you that. Andrew Yang ran as a Democrat. He saw the same thing happen, and he decided, I'm not going to just sit down and shush up. I'm going to try to do something about it. He's creating competition. If you notice, I'm joining forces with the competitor who recognizes that competition is good. A third party in this country would push the 2 parties together because you can no longer win when the exhausted majority of center-right and center-left Americans actually are represented. Now, that might shock people in Washington. There are people watching this right now at the Democratic National Committee saying, we really got to take him down now. He's trying to actually create competition. What a horror. I don't think I need to say more on the subject, everybody. Help me, though. Help me on a last issue.
We've got time for one more question, folks. One more question.
I always get so saddened when it's only one more question. Who's got the question? Oh, I'm sorry.
I got to see you at Havenwood in Concord.
Yes,
For all the young people.
yes, for the youth vote.
The youth vote, yes. So
At a retirement home. Well, relative to the 2 major candidates, it was a rather youthful audience.
I did feel kind of young in that audience.
So did I.
And a question came to me afterwards, so I am presenting it to you. Who would be your running mate?
That's a great question. I'll tell you, I will not opine yet or share names that I might even be thinking about, but I will tell you strategically how we're going to do it. The vice presidency should be among the most important positions in the entire world, and it is. The fact of the matter is presidents do not empower their vice presidents to actually develop their skills, to actually help lead the country, to help operate it. You know, I think Vice President Harris's talents have been completely ignored, frankly, by President Biden. And I think most vice presidents suffer in silence because they're not afforded the opportunity to help actually lead this country. I will do this differently. I will choose somebody who has the competency to be the Chief Operating Officer of the United States of America, who will be working side by side with me to operate the agencies, to ensure we have accountability, to help ideate and innovate ways to save money, deliver services better, and build relationships. Not just go to funerals and ribbon cuttings. That is the most preposterous injustice in democracy. But here's the sad truth. In politics, there is typically not an incentive to actually develop the bench, to prepare your successor, because people are so afraid that those successors might actually do a mutiny or something, that they might actually beat them. And that's why you see people sitting around Washington for way, way too long. That's part of the problem. That's the kind of person I'm looking for. And by the way, like I said, politics is not the important part. Competence and principle is what is important. And I want the Democratic Party to actually practice democracy, which means engaging all voices. By definition, that means conservative voices and progressive voices. We will never all agree exactly on how we should be, but my goodness, we should always favor the underdog and look out for people who are struggling and be decent and inspirational. That's how I want to do this. And I want a vice president that will be as extraordinary as this country has ever had. And that may or may not be somebody who's in Washington right now. And I would bet it probably won't. I don't want to, you never know. All right, so most of all, you ready for change? Let's bring some hope, let's bring some optimism, let's bring the change, and my goodness, we've got 4 days from now, you, every one of you in this room, everyone in this great state, the granite state, you are going to be the focus of not just this country, but the entire world, watching what happens. If you wish to maintain the status quo because you think things are going just swimmingly, and you see a great path forward to the future, I see it differently, but if you are ready to actually be bold and be excited and put smiles on this country's face and actually work with the free world to create peace and prosperity and decency and integrity and safety, let's do it, everybody.
First of
I love you all. Thank you.